Hey guys, welcome to Monday, May 11th notes. So we are winding down to the very end. As you can see, we have one more day after these notes of e-learning notes where I'll have math in a Google form for you. So just Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, all I'm going to have for you is a video for you to watch and probably come to one more Zoom meeting. So that is what we have going on here at the end of the school year. Well, why don't we go ahead and finish up, or not finish up, but get started on today's notes. Today what we're going to be doing is writing an equation for each of these tables. Remember that the equation we're going to use is y equals mx plus b. Remember that m equals slope and b equals the y-intercept. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started with number one. So for number one, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remember m is my slope, which is the change of y over the change of x. So I have to figure out in my table, how does this move for both my x and y column? So to get from 0 to 2, I move up by 2. To get from 2 to 4, I move up by 2. And then from 4 to 6, again, I move up by 2. For y, to get from 3 to 6, I move up by 3. From 6 to 9, I move up by 3. And then from 9 to 12, again, I move up by 3. So my slope for this first one, remember I do it y over x, 3 over 2. This does not need to get changed or simplified anymore. This is it. The next thing that we're going to do is b. Remember, b is my y-intercept. So what I'm looking for when x is 0, what is that y value? And I have it right here in the table. When x is 0, y is 3. So I'm going to put this all together in my equation. Remember that equation we're using is y equals mx plus b. So I have y equals 3/2 x plus 3. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and now move on to number two. Number two, same idea. What I'm going to do is start by finding my slope. Slope is the change of y over the change of x. From -1 to 0, I am increasing by 1. From 0 to 1, again, I increase by 1, and 1 to 2, I increase by 1. To go from -2 to -3, I'm going further away from 0, so I'm going down on the number line, so I go down by 1. -3 to -4, down by 1, and -4 to -5, again down by 1. The slope, remember, it's y over x, so -1 over 1. We can leave it like this, or I can rewrite it and have it simplified as just -1 as a whole number. Either way is fine. The next thing we're going to do is find b. Remember b, when x is 0, what is y? So I'm going to look in my table. When x is 0, my y is -3. So I have -3. We have the equation y equals mx plus b that we're going to use to write our equation. We drop down y. Instead of writing m, we found the m to be -1, so I'll have -1 there. I'm going to drop down x, and we found b to be -3, so I'm going to put -3 in place of b. And that's it. So now we're done with number 2. Let's go ahead and try number 3. So for number 3, same thing. What we're going to start with is calculating slope first. Slope is the change of y over the change of x. So what I'm going to do is figure out how do my x values move. And we can figure that out by going from 1 to 2. To go from 1 to 2, we have to add 1. To go from 2 to 3, we add 1. And to go from 3 to 4, again, we add 1. Now let's take a look at the y column. For the y column, I go from 2 to 4, and I add 2. From 4 to 6, I add 2, and 6 to 8. Again, I add 2. Remember, when I write slope, it's y over x, so it's going to be 2 over 1. And what I can do is I can simplify this to 2. We don't have to. We can leave it as 2 over 1. Either way will work. The next thing I'm going to do is find my y-intercept. Remember, when x is 0, what is that y? When I look at my table, I'm going to look for when x is 0, and it's missing. So what I'm going to do is I have to add in a value for my table. If I need to add in when x is 0, I have to figure out what y would be. Remember how we add 1 each time? So to go from 0 to 1, again, I would continue that pattern by adding 1. So I have to figure out, well, what value would work for y, again, if I continued that pattern, okay? Because again, from 0 to 1, I increase by 1. For my pattern, if I'm going to increase by 2, what plus 2 would give me 2? And hopefully you realize 0. 0 plus 2 gives me 2. So my value here is 0. When I put this into slope-intercept form, remember y equals mx plus b, it looks like y equals, so that gets dropped down. Instead of writing m, we put 2 in for m. I drop down the x. Instead of writing b, I put 0 in for b. So I could leave it like this, or I could leave it as y equals 2x. We don't have to write the 0, but again, both are correct. Okay? All right, I have one more problem for us to try and make sure you get a good understanding of this. So now for number 4, remember our goal is to find slope. So I'm going to start by finding slope. I'm going to remember that slope is always the change of y over the change of x. And I'm going to figure out the movement for each column. So in my x coordinates for this column, to get from 2 to 4, I have to add 2. To get from 4 to 6, again, I have to add 2. And to get from 6 to 8, I add 2. So my pattern for my x coordinates is to add 2 each time. For my y coordinates, from negative 4 to 0, I add 4. From 0 to 4, I add 4. And to get from 4 to 8, again, I'm going to add 4. So I have the pattern of adding 4 each time here. We're going to write this as y over x, so 4 over 2. I can simplify this. If I divide this in my calculator, I get 2. For my y-intercept, for my b, okay, to find that y-coordinate, I have to find when x is 0. I do not have that value when x is 0 in my table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a value in my table. I'm going to put 0 in my table. And I'm going to think about, to get from 0 to 2, all I have to do is add 2. So I can continue this pattern that I already have. So now I have to think about, what value am I going to have here? So what value, when I add 4, gives me negative 4? Okay? So basically, I have to count backwards or subtract. Negative 4 minus 4 gives me negative 8. To check my answer real quick, I'm going to think about negative 8 plus 4. I do get negative 4. So my b is negative 8. Y equals mx plus b, that's the equation we're using. In my last step, the y is dropped down. Instead of writing m, we found that slope is 2. The x is dropped down, and instead of writing b, it is negative 8. And that's it. That's it for today's notes as well. So thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again on tomorrow's notes. Take care.